For this part of the seminar, we are going to talk about a golf course called, a new golf course. It's just outside of Minneapolis in Chaska, Minnesota, called the Loop at Chaska. It's a new development by architect Ben Warren here, and we're going to hear more from Ben in a minute, so I'm not going to give him a big lead up like I just got. We'll get to him in a minute. And this is Tanelle Bolt. She was an advisor on the Loop at Chaska. On the surface, it's just a really cool golf course. It's a 9-hole golf course that kind of checks all the boxes that we think are interesting now, or I assume that all of us in this room think are interesting. And it really ties into the themes that we'll be talking about all week: accessibility, affordability, bringing people from the community into the golf course, breaking down barriers, dissolving the resistance to golf that golf has traditionally had in some communities. It's a par 28 9-hole golf course, wall-to-wall fairway, no rough. The Ben has designed a very low-profile, rambling, links-like contour to the golf course, so the ground game is very prevalent. The greens are inspired in some places by famous template holes and classic course shapes and elevations that we might recognize from a Rainer or from the UK. So it's got all these features that, I'm thinking about this and seeing pictures of it, and like I'm in already. This is great. It was built on an old existing 9-hole course. It was called the par 30 Chaska course, built in the early 1970s by Robert Trent Jones, and it was kind of a classic 9-hole golf course of the era. It wasn't just enough to be 9 holes. It was kind of jazzed up with bunkers and water features. And over the years, it had gotten kind of worn down and kind of outworn its welcome. And the city was looking to analyze what they could do with this course. Did something need to be done? Did it need to be converted to something else? What could we do with it? It's right down the street from Hazeltine, and one of the members of Hazeltine, Tim Anderson, who's here today, really helped found an organization to help kind of achieve some of the same mission that we've been talking about: how to bring new people into the game, how to bring children, beginners into it, how to bring people with disabilities onto the golf course. So he created a foundation called Barrier Free Golf, and took this idea to the city and said, well, what if we take this golf course that's existing and remodel it into an archetype of what a property would look like that breaks down these barriers and allows people of all skill levels, of all ages, of all abilities to come and play golf and have complete functionality on this golf course. It's a place where they can learn the game, they can play with their kids, their families. If they're in a vehicle because they're disabled, they can get in and out around the golf course, they can go on the putting green. So this was the idea. Ben Warren got involved with this idea, and the golf course was completely remodeled, reconceptualized, and stripped down and built from the ground up, with the idea that this would be a golf course that is functional for any potential type of golfer. And at this point, I want to bring Tanelle into it because as a adaptive golfer, she comes from a design background. She is a world-class outdoor athlete. And she's also the daughter of a superintendent. So she had a very unique perspective on how to talk to Ben and the design team and incorporate the ideas with how this particular golf course could function for people in paragolfers and other equipment. So I'm going to let Tanelle introduce herself and give a little bit of background on herself and her input into this project.
Thanks, Derek. So my name's Tanelle Bolt. I was able-bodied till I was 27 years old and grew up playing outdoors for recreation purposes only my entire life. I was introduced to golf and the game and the course very, very young. I grew up, my dad, like you said, being the superintendent. We didn't play traditional style golf. I played more Scottish style golf, where bare feet and a couple of clubs when everybody has gone home and your dad's fertilizing the greens with the dog and my brother and sister. That's my experience with the game. At 27, I sustained a spinal cord injury in a recreation accident and found myself in a giant gap in the system where if you are independent living with a mobility challenge or a disability, there is very limited access for you to the equipment to get you outside to do any recreation activity. So I started a charity, founded RAD Recreation Adapted Society, Canadian registered charity. Oh, I'm from BC. Sorry, I don't think we talked about that. So I live on Vancouver Island, where we can golf 12 months of the year up in Canada. It's great. But the paragolfer and the adaptive device that is used for golf, I found online. I called my dad. I said, "Is this okay on the greens? Because I'm not going to get it if it's not." And when he told me yes, I went on the mission to get one of these for the charity so that it was publicly available for anybody to try. This led me to be on the Mod Golf podcast. I'm associated with British Columbia Golf, and they introduced me to a gentleman who hosts this podcast, which I might get on yours next. Yeah. And this is how the woman that is involved with barrier-free golf found me. She was just listening to anything to do with adaptive golf and access to that. So I was invited to a roundtable event with Benjamin after hours of conversation and months of you trying to get a hold of me, with no intention of being further involved in the project. However, after this roundtable, with my background in golf, the game, the health and wellness benefits of it, promotion of adaptive recreation, plus my interior design and building background, I was invited to further participate in the project, come and check it out in the building phase. So I was all dirt. We just had blueprints. You had in the middle of shaping, and I was able to come out to Minnesota, borrow a solo rider from Hazeltine, and go and actually drive the dirt course to make sure that it was going to be truly accessible for somebody with a mobility challenge. When I participated there, we also had lower limb amputees come and introduce themselves and walk the course and make sure it worked for their level of ability as well. Yeah, we've been growing grass, and now I'm here.
Literally.
Yeah.
You know, the term accessibility and sustainability and access and lowering barriers is a theme for the National Links Trust, and it's all in our minds. And though it was even mentioned before a little bit about creating golf courses or retrofitting golf courses for people with disabilities, it's still, to me, as I think of it, maybe the last real frontier about giving every class of golfer an opportunity to play the game. You know, we focus a lot on socioeconomics and location and ability, skill-wise, age, wanting to get older generations, continuing them to play, getting young kids in the game. But golfers with disabilities is sort of like the last frontier. And I think that's why this project is so interesting and so important to talk about. Probably like most of you in this room, I hadn't spent a lot of time considering that element of the game and its potential up until recently. I had in the last probably 12 months, I had an opportunity to spend a day with some golfers with disabilities in my hometown of Atlanta. And I was really struck by how important it was to these people to be able to hold a golf club and to get on the driving range or to get on a golf course. There was a mother who had a son who was born with a congenital physical disability, who had very limited mobility. And I think he was about 15 by that time, and he really had zero experience with being a recreational person or getting outdoors. He just physically didn't have the ability to do it. And I think his parents were frustrated, but they were able to give him access to a vehicle where he could go out to the golf course at Bobby Jones Golf Course in Atlanta and take a lesson with a professional. And just speaking with the mother and seeing, you know, how she responded to the change in her son's outlook, and how every day he woke up and all he wanted to do was go to the golf course and swing the golf club, and he was getting better at it as well. And I met another man who became disabled later in life through a car accident, and he said he went through a deep depression and was suicidal at points. And once he discovered golf and how he could get in a paragolfer and go out and actually play golf on this golf course, it changed his whole perspective. And, you know, we think of golf as being important to us and having the ability to change communities and change lives, but in a fundamental, like real life-saving way, places like the Loop of Chaska can save people's lives. And I don't mean to be overly dramatic about that, but it has the ability to have that effect. So I think that's why it's important to talk about and to look at a course like this as yes, it's a great place in Minnesota to go play. And if obviously, if you're in the area, I know you're all going to be interested to go see the golf course, and the people who live in this community are also great because they're going to have children's programs and a Himalaya style putting green that Ben's built, and all kinds of ways that you can experience golf at this beautiful little brand new facility. But also to look at this as how we can take this idea as a model and potentially bring it to other communities around the United States. And it may not be a complete ground up creation of a golf course from scratch like this one is, but there are also ways that existing courses can retrofit their courses so that adaptive players can function better. And one of the let's get into one of the interesting things is and obstacles is the equipment that adaptive golfers need to get around the course. And Tanelle, we'll ask her to talk about that in a minute. But Ben, I wanted to get to you and talk about your involvement. On one hand, it's an amazing opportunity for you as a young designer to have a golf course that you can conceptualize and create. And really for the first time, you've been a shaper on other crews and worked around the world on some great locations with some of the great architects. And now you had your opportunity. How did you approach this design? And then maybe you could talk about working with Tanelle and how your ideas and her ideas came together to create these holes.
Sure, got it. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Tanelle. Thank you, National Links Trust. And really, this all starts with a nonprofit organization founded in Minnesota, Barrier Free Golf, and their mission to make golf affordable and accessible for everyone. And so I guess they put out a request for proposals, and I was included in that RFP. And to me, I was really excited by this. I'd spent 5 years, I grew up in Scotland in a town called North Berwick, which for anyone working in the golf course kind of design and construction space, pretty much everyone wishes they grew up there. Right? It was a good school. So that was an incredible kind of background to be coming into something like this, because in Scotland, and especially in North Berwick, there's public putting courses. North Berwick Golf Club itself has a kids course, which is this beautiful little piece of land, like a 9-hole property that kind of meanders its way close to the famous Redan hole. There's one bunker on the golf course from memory, but it just has a bunch of cool contours, and it's a really neat place to grow up playing golf and to grow your golf IQ as a very young golfer. And those opportunities on short format golf courses are kind of few and far between. So yeah, Barrier Free Golf had this idea, and to me, looking at the property online, I was in Tokyo, I think, at the time when they reached out to me, and I started to look at the site. And in my mind, I can remember talking to Ben Crenshaw about Hazeltine. I think he was the low-am in the US Open there in the 70s, probably way back. And he said, oh, it's great land, Hazeltine, great land. So I mean, basically this parcel is connected to Hazeltine. So I'm already thinking like, okay, there's got to be something there. Sure enough, it looks interesting on Google Earth. There's a big kind of wetland lake thing in the middle that the Jones guys, Mr. Jones and his team had manipulated a little bit and set a bunch of greens very close to it. I mean, it was quite a, let's say, it was a championship short course, if you want to put it that way. It was tough, right? It was a tough golf course. You could lose a lot of balls out there. So yeah, to my eye, it looked like something where we could just manipulate the existing contours a little bit, mostly as short grass, and just give people a chance to go out there with some fun greens and smash balls all over the place and not really think about it, all that hard. So then I split, and actually the concept, I think what I said to Barrier Free Golf at the start was, this feels to me like this could just be a scaled out version of the Himalayas putting course at St. Andrews, which is the ultimate kind of come one, come all, old folks, young folks, anyone. You can just go out there with a putter and you can knock balls over these really interesting contours. And it's the lowest common denominator for enjoying golf. Super, super fun. So how can we bring a little bit of that to this really neat little property that is on Hazeltine Boulevard? I mean, as you drive into Hazeltine, this thing's right there. It's an awesome location.
Tanelle, let me give everybody kind of a view of, if we could get this next slide up.
Are you pointing it to
well, that's not important. You had a lot of input, as we've said with Ben, about how to make this golf course adaptable. And part of the big challenge is the different types of equipment adaptive golfers and disabled people have to use to get around the golf course. One's a paragolfer. What was your experience, first of all, like using golf after your injury to kind of the progress for you to get into this place that you were, and how important was golf and other recreation into that? And then also, I think it would be helpful to kind of illustrate a typical round of golf for you at a golf course that wasn't really fit for the vehicles that are necessary for you to play golf.
Oh gosh, that's loaded. My first experience with what's called the paragolfer, I don't know if we can like figure out what that tech difficulty is there, because it'll give everybody a good picture of what's actually being used. No, that's a solo rider. There we go. That's a paragolfer.
There you trigger.
You're getting happy over there. There we go. Perfect. This is the paragolfer. It is designed exactly like a triplex. And anybody who has been hurt in a recreation accident or immediately loses their mobility, we still have the ego that we had before we were hurt. So I did not want to be in a power wheelchair. I have a manual wheelchair with no handles on the back. And it's like the kid that's always, no help, mom, no help. So my experience with the paragolfer, I went in, with sunglasses on. Yeah, maybe I won't like it. It's an electric assist device. I sat down in the thing. I wanted 6 of them for me and all of my friends. I was able to drive the ball off the tee in the standing position in almost exactly the same way as I had done before. And we had a paragolf representative from the Autobach manufacturer that had come out, and he was horrible at golf. So the fact that I could get in the thing and hit the ball further than him and sink a putt from 30 feet away was just an absolutely unreal experience. So much so that I got in my vehicle. I drove from Canada to Vista, California, knocked on the engineer's door and begged him for the amount of money that I had to be able to take one home, and that I was good for the rest of the debt. I hired a U-Haul trailer, put it behind my vehicle, and pulled it all the way back with me. So the barriers only start there. Once I have this, this cost 31,500 American dollars, which in Canada is close to 45. That being a barrier, you pull up to the course, try to park that somewhere and unload it out of your vehicle is tough. Maintaining it is hard. And then you have to get into that clubhouse and go and face the cultural barrier that is golf in America. This is why I say I play a Scottish style golf. I'm not sure what it's like to show up to a course there with an adaptive piece of equipment, but I would assume that you're not getting chaperoned for the first 3 holes by somebody who thinks that you're going to wreck their course. Any adaptive golfer that shows up, we would like to come back and we would like to golf again. So we are going to try our hardest not to wreck anything. The design of this piece of equipment in particular, it was designed by a gentleman who himself has a spinal cord injury and lives in a wheelchair. It's very mindful of all of the health concerns that we have. Seated all the time, pressure sores are a very major one. The solo rider that was in that picture before is another great adaptive golf tool. It has 4 wheels. It is not designed like a triplex. It's not completely designed to go on greens and do a lot of this functionality, but it does serve a very large population of people who are mobility limited, not to the same extreme as somebody who's completely paralyzed. So the culture of the course is really the greatest barrier as a female in the game. I worked at 16 years old at a golf course who had just started letting women golf there in the 70s. So I had a little bit of that experience. And then you dump disability on top. They don't want you there. They don't expect you to be there. And they think that you're a liability in your being anywhere on the course. So it's the mindset shift, and people in a room like this that have an interaction with any paragolfer that is, just the education behind adaptive golf and barrier-free golf and, any municipal course should be welcome to all of the people that live in the community. So yeah, that's been my experience. Like built environment stuff, a lot of individuals, they understand the wheelchair can't go upstairs. Your wheelchair is not going to get onto a T that has a crazy rise and a flight of stairs. You know, and some of the courses in Canada, I had my own, the rad paragolfer at one of them while they built a new putting surface and they built it up a step. They had the paragolfer there the entire time. So where do you have to go as a person who's a paragolfer? Not the same path as the rest of the team goes, which is only up this much of a step. You have to go around the back, through the gravel, up where the lawnmowers go. It's just a really degrading experience when all it would have taken is somebody with a little bit of forethought to be like, oh, hey, we have this paragolfer here and we notice. They don't notice. So this is hopefully the beginning of the mindset shift.
Right. And what you're talking about with the equipment that paragolfers need, that's in itself an obstacle. You mentioned the price and how expensive it is just to I mean, it's almost prohibitive for people to own this equipment just to go play golf. And so it would be wonderful if courses could provide a paragolfer or two so that somebody could just go to the golf. They don't have to transport it from their garage or store it and then bring it to the golf course. So that's kind of the next step in this evolution, is for courses to provide some of this equipment for them. And that's what your society RAD helps do, that you help locate this. And it's what Chaska is doing, that's correct. And they'll have some of these vehicles available on site for rental.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the unique things in the Chaska project was that it was a partnership project between City of Chaska and Barrier Free Golf. And Barrier Free Golf, did some work up front, kind of coming up with the RFP and like the creative brief for the golf course, how do we want this golf course to kind of operate? And the trade with the city for their fundraising and their contribution to the overall project budget was, the city's going to operate it, own it long term, but they're giving Barrier Free Golf, 4,000 tee times a year, or Barrier Free Golf and other partners to use for free to do adaptive programming, or junior golf introductions, or returning to golf. So there's going to be lots of opportunities to get different kind of underserved groups of golfers out there and get them into the game for free. Yeah. So I think providing adaptive equipment and giving people a kind of introductory education about how to use that equipment can happen at the Loop at Chaska. So what we did from the design standpoint to try and achieve that was, it's a tiny golf course. I mean, this thing is, I think our usable area for golf was like 14 acres, so super, super small. And as within the golf course, we set up like a coaching area. So they have the ability to take groups of new golfers, whether it be a bunch of juniors or a bunch of new adaptive golfers, take them out into an area of the golf course. So, okay, let's give a quick kind of overview of what we're looking at here. That's Lake Hazeltine in the background, Hazeltine Boulevard running up on the right-hand side there. We've got our Minalea's putting course. Shout out to Sugarloaf Social Club for naming that one. Minalea's putting course in the bottom right there, which is 30,000 square foot putting green, all kinds of humpy bumpy cool stuff going on. And a little 9-hole loop that goes out around the wetland and kind of plays back towards the clubhouse, which will be in the bottom, the center bottom of the picture there. So to get, with the best will in the world, you don't really want to send someone in their first shot in a paragolfer or a solo rider like onto a Himalaya's putting green. It's cool that we have it there. It's like the focal point of the entire thing. But we built a little coaching area further out. So there's a nice ADA path that kind of runs out along the side of the property and takes the golfers out to a coaching area, which is kind of sits adjacent to hole number 8 and plays to the green of hole number 7. So they just take that hole out of the routing, play from 6 green, from the back of 6 green, a tee off the back of 6 green to 8 green. So we've got this dedicated area where you can just use that for introductory programming, even in this tiny, tiny parcel. So I think from there you have, with the way that Barrier Free Golf in the City of Chaska will program the place, they'll have the ability to, apologies, I'm Scottish if I'm talking too fast, I apologize. So they'll have the ability to take some of those 4,000 free rounds per year, and maybe they close the golf course and use a couple of holes to do a kind of introductory event or whatever it is. There's just all kinds of different creative ways to use those tee times. So I'm thrilled to see how this goes forward. Very excited to see the programming coming to life, and as soon as we see kids and folks just rampaging around that putting green, it's going to be a happy day.
Yeah. And just architecturally, the way the course is designed, I feel like there's it seems like there's a natural connection with a very low profile golf course where the defense of the golf course is really in the contours.
Yeah.
That's just a style of golf that is interesting to advanced players as well. It's great for kids who go out and can't get the ball in the air, or anybody who can't get the ball in the air. And it's you can transplant that almost anywhere, and yet it's also very functional for adaptive players. So there's this beautiful crossover between kind of linksy Scottish architecture and being able, and which is proof, hundreds of years in your country, they figured that out a long time ago.
Sustainability.
You also had a real kind of A team of shapers who helped you create this. Talk about that. You had Jim Craig, who's shaped for decades for Bill Corr and Ben Crenshaw, Jonathan Reeseter, Brett Hochstein, who's been all over the world yourself. How was that like, getting all that really powerful brain trust together to figure out how we can bring out these shapes and these contours?
It was super fun. I mean, the design is not just the pieces of paper that we kind of put together before the project starts. The creative team doesn't really get together until those guys are on site. And, to have Tanelle kind of come on site with us at the same time was just an absolute thrill. Like, we had a blast. So yeah, I mean, we had Jim and, Jonathan Reester and Brett coming in. We also had a good local shaper from Minnesota, Dan Beganic, who did an awesome turn kind of working on that lake over winter. And yeah, I mean, the golf IQ of those shapers is like off the charts, right? They're so, they've all spent time in Scotland and kind of studied all the great golf courses. And from my part, I was just trying to channel Bill Corr. I was just out there walking laps of the golf course over and over again, kind of checking in with the guys. And it was an absolute thrill. It really was. And when Jim and I went out there, I think he was the first shaper to arrive after driving overnight from Texas, the panhandle of Texas. Just turned up, rolled out of his truck. Let's get to work. And Jim immediately kind of came up with the idea that, which kind of struck a chord with me, having grown up in North Berwick and North Berwick Kids Course, where, if this course is cool for, smaller golfers and people who have slow swing speeds and can't hit it very far, you're immediately kind of giving them an adrenaline shot of golf IQ by putting them on this golf course that has some kind of architectural chops, for want of a better word. Yeah, and Jim got it. All the guys just immediately got it. Like, yeah, this can be really fun for someone who hits the ball low, doesn't have like a high swing speed. Like, I would describe that as like ground game golf, and in Scotland, that's kind of what we grew up with.
Right. Other than the culture of golf, which as we all know, or I think most of us know, is not always welcoming even to able-bodied people. There's a lot of intimidation that goes into getting into the sport. That's going to be an ongoing process for adaptive golf, but just kind of functionality. What are some of the things that you think that just an average golf course could do to make your life easier when you come to play there?
Oh, the simplest thing is accessible parking. To even acknowledge that you're welcome. Like, can I park? Can I get in the door of the clubhouse? And can I use the washroom facility? Is before you even think about getting on the course. These are all things that if I can't do one of the three, I'm not coming. Just simple things are, if you don't need the 8x8 railway tie to hold the dirt in there, and you can extend the slope a little bit to make it a little bit easier for the para golfer. Forward tees are incredibly important, again, with this low and slow game that a lot of the amateur golfers, beginner golfers, aging golfers have. It's imperative to have forward tees, or the ability to even put it at the end of the fairway, right? I golfed in the Mallorca, it was a wheelchair golf open championship in 2018. We had 42 of those para golfers on one single course. And the tournament organizer didn't talk to Tanelle. They just went about it the traditional way. And you had people out there all day long that did not finish 18 holes because they were golfing from the traditional tee sets. So I run my big mouth. I told everybody how they should have it done. And the next day, they had all the tees moved forward. Everybody was golfing from forward tees. You can't have that, you know, one guy that hits a really long ball occasionally who's golfing off the back tees. Like the first day we would have all been with our pants down if we golfed by like generic rules. So just slight modifications, you know, being aware of paragolf rules and that you can pull the ball into your field of play so that when you stand up, say on the green, and you stand that paragolfer up, you do not want that piece of equipment moving in a tiny location, bruising the grass surface. So within the scorecard, you can pull that ball back towards you or back in your stance within the scorecard so that you can position yourself appropriately. It helps the rate of play, but you know, a traditional style golfer would look at you, be like, you can't do that. Well, yes, I can. Well, where are the paragolf rules? They're not written down anywhere. Yeah, so just education again. Yeah.
All right. We're running out of time for this section of the panel. Maybe one or two questions if we can, if anybody has them. And if not, I'm sure Tanelle and Ben would be happy to speak to you after this session.
And how much property is there? How many acres?
Overall, I believe it's 28 and we had 14 usable. And it's, you know, the non-usable section that is a wetland. It was actually pretty cool. It had been converted into like an aesthetic lake hazard and we restored it to a wetland, which is what it was pre-golf course. Built an irrigation lake in the center. So it's kind of a cool little property. It's a bathtub. So we had all these creeks and just, you know, all the water that comes in the property we're collecting. So, you know, I think this golf course will be able to go off of groundwater, which is pretty neat addition to the overall project.
George.
And the golf course has no bunkers on it, correct?
No bunkers.
How did you kind of come to the conclusion that that was going to be the approach that you took, and sort of how did you wrap your head around it? How did you wrap your clients' heads around it? And then how did you sort of tackle that element of it? Because I know that's such a traditional hazard, but it can be an obstacle for people, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely an obstacle. And honestly, in some of golf architecture, it's just like a crutch. You know, we just put bunkers out there because it gives you contrast and it gives you, you know, drama. I would say again, for me, like I'm just like a Scottish kid, and like you can't see any bunkers in Scotland. You know they're there, but you can't see them. So it's not really part of like the visual language of the golf course. So to me, to like just take bunkers out of visually, I don't think you lose anything really. It's just it's a matter of taste and preference, right? So when we started talking about the project, you know, it's with the best will in the world. It's a tiny muni golf course. It's going to have, I think, 2 full-time members on the maintenance team. Even if you were to go out and build, even if, you know, bunkers were a good fit for what we wanted to deliver on that thing, they're the hardest thing to maintain in a muni golf setting. So, you know, we're like on the very edge of the era of like robot mowing, right? So what could be easier than pre-programming your mowers and just have at it? Bunkers, that's a different story. So there's the maintenance aspect, there's the financial sustainability aspect. It's just getting those things a good enough quality on like this very kind of secondary, like Chaska has a town course which has co-hosted USAM, is that correct? Yeah, so I mean they have like a really serious big full spec championship uni in town. And I think the arrangement of that big golf course and this like ultimate kind of entry-level golf course where, you know, there are some hazards out there. There is a creek that you can see kind of running down across the, you know, the 9th hole there. And really the hazard is contour. And for us, we felt that, and certainly barrier-free golf felt that that access in and out of bunkers is one of the things that doesn't necessarily make the game, bunkers don't necessarily make the game more enjoyable. For new golfers, it's like the hardest technique to learn. Figuring out how to get out of a bunker can take a long, long time. So, you know, if you take that out of the equation, theoretically, golf course could be more enjoyable for entry-level golfers. Take out some of the frustrations of picking up the game.
And we'll pick up on that theme again in the next panel. We're going to do a quick panel change right now and bring on George Waters and Andy Staples. So if you all just sit tight, we'll do a quick change. Thanks to Tanelle and Ben. So this part's going to be kind of a continuation of a lot of the themes that you heard in the last conversation. But let me first introduce our new panel. You just met Ben. I think you're getting to know him pretty well. We've also have in the middle is George Waters. George is the manager of the USGA Green Section Education. He has an extensive background in golf course design, maintenance, construction, and sustainability. George worked on the golf maintenance teams at Royal Dornoch, Marion, and Cal Club, not bad, among others. While working with renowned golf course architects like Tom Doak and Bill Corr and Ben Crenshaw, George contributed to the restoration of classic courses like Pasatiempo and Pinehurst No. 2, and the construction of highly regarded new designs like Sabonic, Barnbougle Dunes, and Rock Creek Cattle Company. He also published an award-winning book titled Sand and Golf: How Terrain Shapes the Game. George is an associate editor of the USGA Green Section Record and regularly contributes articles related to golf course maintenance and design for USGA publications. And on the far right is Andy Staples. Andy Staples is an ASGCA member and principal of Staples Golf Design. He was brought into golf at the age of 7 by his dad, having learned the game at West Bend Country Club in West Bend, Wisconsin. Through nearly 30 years of experience in design, construction, and long-term maintenance throughout the world, Andy has developed 27 master plans, 6 new golf course designs, and has performed over 100 golf course efficiency audits. His practice is built around the proven process of team collaboration, budget-oriented design, and proven results. Andy was named one of the 9 most innovative people in golf in 2022 and 9 most innovative people in player development 2016 by Golf Inc. magazine. So welcome, everybody. Glad to have you here. Equity in action is the topic of the week here at the symposium. I think we could all agree. I mean, the concept of equity is important. The definition of equity is the quality of being fair and impartial. Who could argue against the virtues of that? Another way to look at it, the concept of equity is the value of the investment in a particular thing. And we know what we put into golf is equivalent or hopefully more of what we get out of golf. So these are what we're talking about this week is what can we do to put into golf to get things out of it for not just ourselves, but for all the people who play it. But I kind of want to challenge this preference just at the top and get your input on it. You know, for 10, 15 years, the concept has been grow the game. And well, what do we all need to do to make golf, you know, bigger and more accessible and better? And part of me has always thought, you know, we're talking about an ancient game. It's been kind of what it is and has evolved slightly, of course, but it's really been golf for centuries. What's wrong with golf being, you know, just aspirational? Like, what's wrong with asking people to come into golf and play by golf's rules? Why is it? How important is it for golf? And is it important for golf to evolve and change and do things to try to attract new people into it? So just to lay a preference for that, Andy, do you have thoughts on that? Are we on the right track? Does golf always have to evolve and change and maybe even fundamentally alter its core being to attract new generations?
Well, I would answer that by saying, just from an evolution standpoint, so I'm newly 50 years old, so I'm not that old, but I've been around playing golf for a while. When I first got in the game, it was all about difficult golf, right? So if you saw anything on TV or any of the little bit of the magazines, it was about challenging the best players. And if you weren't one of the best players, then you were asked by the sport to just get better. And so I would say, you know, we love the game of golf for what it is. And I think that the game is hard. There's an aspirational aspect to executing that shot. Can we get it there? But I will tell you that from an equity standpoint, there is a need to change a little bit off of this idea of what actually is fun golf or what is the future of golf, the game. And I would say that there has to be some level of an adjustment. And the other thing too about grow the game, it doesn't all have to sit in one box. We don't have to provide one type of golf course for everyone. And what Ben is doing is an example of that it doesn't mean we can have different types of facilities for different types of players. And so I think that's a real healthy evolution that our game is going through right now.
It strikes me that, and I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here. I definitely agree that fun golf is better than is superior than not fun golf. I think we could stipulate that. But people have played golf for decades, and all through this period of time when, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when golf courses were being built, and these are the golf courses that we would consider the hard golf courses, the championship 9-hole par 30 golf course at Chaska being just one example. And yet people still played golf. The biggest period of golf growth in the United States was in the 19, which also coincides with the period of golf development that's really not looked at very fondly right now. And that was sort of the beginning of championship style golf in these big onerous golf courses. People seem to find golf no matter what. There's something intuitive about wanting to play the game and being able to suffer through the travails of it if the golf courses are too hard. George, where are we like in the spectrum of having these two concepts of you have people who play golf even though it's difficult versus us having this conversation about ways that we can make it architecturally more accessible and fun, if that's even a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think for the vast majority of people, the difficulty factor is just inherent. That is just going to be there because that's just the nature of trying to hit a golf ball on any kind of consistent basis. And so I don't think you need to try to make golf more difficult. I don't think you need to worry so much about like making sure to protect the difficulty of golf. I think it's just there as far as like bringing people to the game. So like, I don't think those two are opposed. I mean, I think the inherent challenge of golf is not going anywhere. That's part of the game as long as you're playing the game. As far as bringing more people to the game, yeah, people have continued to play golf, even if it was more difficult, if it was, not always enjoyable. But I don't think that just because people manage to persist through that means that they should or need to. And especially when, we talked, you sort of mentioned like, well, should people, adjust themselves to golf or sort of vice. I don't think that facing an unreasonable challenge or unreasonable obstacles is really like an inherent part of golf. Like there's nothing about golf that says that you can't have tees that are a reasonable playing distance for someone new to the game or someone who doesn't swing that fast. And really having those like removing some of those like very basic, like simple kind of barriers opens a lot of doors. And those barriers are really only being presented to people with slower swing speeds, people who are new to the game, people who have an injury, whatever it is. A lot of us in this room have tees that work well for us. And so we just, maybe we don't recognize the problem that a lot of people have, but we've all also played courses from a set of tees that was too long for us and probably not had the best time and thought, geez, I don't want to do that again. But there's an awful lot of people that's their first experience with golf. That's their forever experience with golf. And that's a pretty easy thing to remedy. And so I think when we can make those kind of changes to open some more doors, I'm not satisfied with the number of people playing golf. And that's not from a golf business grow the game standpoint. I think it's an awesome game. And I think that more people playing it, I think it would be great if way more people played it because it's just fun. It's done a lot for me. I think a lot of people in this room feel like their lives are better because of golf. And so like, let's try to take some of the easy opportunities to open those doors.
Ben, Damon asked Tom, where's the gap or the distance between golf in Scotland that he experienced in the early 1980s when he did his tour over there and American golf and where we are now. You grew up in North America, as we've established. I'd be interested to get your perspective coming to American, what you've noticed in your experience in this country. What do you think of American golf and its model, and has American golf moved at all in your estimation, or is it moving closer to something that might be more sympathetic to Scottish golf? Obviously the loop at Chaska is very much close to your heart and you're where you come from, but just overall, what were your impressions of American golf when you first encountered it?
Probably like the majority of people who grew up playing golf in Scotland, my introduction to American golf was PGA Tour golf. So it's the first thing that you see, or even golf video games,
Yeah,
I guess for a lot of people. So, was fortunate that my interest in golf architecture coincided with Tom Doak and his company coming to work at Renaissance Club in Scotland. You know, it's like 2006, 2007 there. I can't remember. Anyway. And so it was immediately apparent to me in my mid-20s that there was a set of golf architects and a set of people in North America who were building golf courses that, you know, I walked out in Renaissance Club. I was like, this is the type of golf that I like. So I would say the last 25 years of golf architecture and the development of golf architecture in America it feels closer. It feels like it's going back to the original source material in Scotland and taking maybe a little bit more inspiration from that, where I think the very hyper-maintained long championship golf courses were probably a bit of a diversion from golf in Scotland, except for, you know, a handful of open rota courses that are tough. And those members are basically playing those courses as match play courses anyway. So it doesn't really matter if it's that tough. You just pick up and move on. So, yeah, does that answer? I don't know that, but like, I do feel like the last 25 years of golf architecture in America have been tremendously exciting. And actually, you know, I'm looking, I think even places like Scotland are looking to the US now for inspiration on, you know, what do we do with some of our better properties that have average golf courses on them. So it's interesting.
It's an interesting twist.
Interesting time. Yeah.
Interesting twist. You mentioned PGA golf and came up with Tom Doak as well. It strikes me as professional golf and the tours became televised in the late 50s and through the 60s and 70s, that had a real undue impact on how Americans perceived the game. A lot of just like yourself, your perception of golf was through television, and that's how most Americans came to view the game of golf as well, as through their televisions and watching the great professionals play and compete in tournaments. And it colored what the perception of the ideal golf course was as well. And most golf courses then aspired to look like they did on television, which were mostly parkland tree-lined golf courses with really fast greens and super green grass. It seems to me also, though, that we're kind of the current golfer is willing to kind of depart from that model or that aspiration, or having that be kind of the golf experience that they're looking for. That certainly still exists, very much so. But are any of you sensing the same thing, that there's a new type of golfer who's willing to explore golf like on the margins and isn't interested necessarily in the golf that us or our parents were necessarily brought up on?
I don't know. That's a really hard question to answer, because my initial reaction is no, not my clients, because they still want fast greens and they want it to be, you know, 100% green the rest of the year or the entire year. They want tournament conditions all the time. So we as architects are constantly kind of fighting and discussing, all right, well, what's your real green speed? You know, are your greens, should they be a 10 or 11, or do you really need them to be 12? The one great thing about technology and agronomy is grasses do stay greener longer, greener without as much input, without as much water. So you're actually seeing science converge to expectation. But then again, you get a guy or a group of people that go to Bandon and pay insanely amounts of money to go play a golf course that it's brown, and they love it. And it reminds me of the same feeling I had when I got back from my first trip to St. Andrews. I had much the same discussion for my golfing soul when I got back from St. Andrews, and I said, how in the world has North America missed the mark this far? And it comes all the way back to that time about TV, when we finally got to see Augusta in the April every spring, and the rest of the country was under snow and it was brown. And there's a rebirth every spring, and that's what everybody wants all the time now. So I'd like to believe that the expectation has just been raised even higher, but it's becoming more expensive and much more difficult from an environmental standpoint. So I think I answered your question like, no, I don't think the golfer is quite there yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think you think about those trips. I think that sadly, the North American golfer is able to compartmentalize those pretty well in terms of like, okay, I went to Scotland, I had a great time and I saw all this stuff, but when I get home, I sure don't want to see any of that stuff. Of course.
That's right.
And same with Bandon. And
I mean, one of the big things we're talking about in terms of, equity in golf, I mean, availability of golf is a big part of that, right? Like if there aren't golf courses around in our areas where we live to play, that's going to be a big damper on, the equity of people's access to the games. Just physically can't get to the golf courses. They can't afford to play them. And unfortunately, I mean, there's a lot of pressures on golf from a bunch of different angles in that context in terms of development, resource use, water use, whatever it is. Our own expectations are a big part of that equation. I mean, in terms of the economic and environmental sustainability of golf, having expectations that go above and beyond what a course can deliver is a real challenge for those as a business model. Now, obviously, there's places that are on, the high end that have the budgets to do whatever they want. It's once you get away from that, and it's their money and that's how they want to spend it. Once you get off of that is where it starts to get really weird of like, okay, well, we want, I mean, like, that's where like the context thing I think really matters. Like the trip to Scotland is fine because you're over in Scotland, but now that you're back in your suburban town and you just played in an event down the street and these guys' course is perfect and mine doesn't, I mean, then that immediate context becomes a way bigger factor, but people don't always do the, have the information or do the calculations of like, okay, well, their maintenance budget is twice yours. They have 30 guys working on the course. You don't, I mean, so that the expectations get out of alignment with reality pretty quickly. And I think that's a real challenge for places to overcome. I think it's really tough.
Yeah, I would just add to that, the expectation for the golfer, in my opinion, has continued to increase. That expectation has forced owners and agronomy superintendents to meet that expectation. And at some point you have to ask, is it going to keep going that direction, or at what point will it start to move backwards? And I hope that it's moving backwards slightly, but there is far too much money being invested in golf right now to change over to the new turf, to have the new irrigation systems, to have all the new drainage, have all the new sand, that when as me as an architect say, well, hey, let's not buy the $120 a ton sand, let's buy the $45 a ton sand. Well, that $45 a ton sand does fried eggs, ball lands in it, and I don't like playing out of it. So they'll want to spend the extra money for it. So the best thing that I do then is, okay, instead of doing 90 bunkers or 60 bunkers, I might try to do no bunkers. Maybe I'll only do 11 bunkers. So if I'm going to do bunkers, I want to do them really well, but do less of them. So that's the kind of the balance from an architect standpoint that I feel we're really being challenged with right now.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a sad outcome for golfers in that, I think that they're making a choice with their expectations that they may not be fully cognizant of, because yeah, I mean, Andy's 100% right. It's probably easier at this point to just do fewer bunkers than to try to figure out how to dial down their expectations. So fine, we'll do fewer bunkers. I think bunkers are really cool sometimes. And I spent a lot of my career building bunkers. And for me, I think it would be, I spent a lot of time putting bunkers back that people had taken out because they were too expensive over the years. And, to me, the trade-off, if someone said, would you accept a sand that had some pebbles in it and you can still keep all the bunkers on the course, or you want me to take half the bunkers out? I'd say, all right, fine, put the sand with the pebbles in. But that isn't how the choice necessarily gets processed. And so the expectation is the expectation, and that's just it. And so I do think they're losing something without realizing they might be losing something.
Yeah, and it's I mean, the whole conversation's turned kind of dark because like we're here to talk about, bringing people into the game and accessibility and feeling. I know. And yet with the experience that we're getting back is that golfers still want something that's unattainable maybe for their budget, and golf's getting more expensive across the board areas.
I would try to just pose questions back to Ben about economics, because really at the end of the day, if these courses are being successful and they're done in a way that reaches a market that the industry has flat out ignored their entire career, at least as long as I've been playing golf, the disabled golfer is completely off of anyone's radar. I did a city course, 27 hole, well, it was 18 holes championship because they needed to call it championship. The community college played there. Then I did a 9-hole par 3 course with a full practice facility. And to me, I through that process, I did an entire accessibility map where I showed where everybody could reach to all the points on the golf course if you were disabled. And I think that's down in the behind the counter somewhere. They don't do any work on it. I put a huge amount of effort in it. And so I'd like to hear more. Our industry needs more of those examples so we can rely on them. We'll take those examples, and from an architect standpoint, we need to do a better job of saying these work.
Well, I think that the key point at Chaska is that if you were just to go around and fill in all the bunkers on a golf course, it would be horrible. It would be truly horrible. That approach only works if you're kind of building it from the ground up, and you're basing your golf holes on the amazing golf holes that we've all seen that don't have any bunkers, and just taking little features and cool green complexes, and just creating challenge through other features that don't require perhaps a great deal of strength to hit it high or far. But golf ultimately is a game of skill and nerve, and hitting the ball far is a skill, of course. But if you're trying to let the most diverse group of people possible all enjoy the same golf course, giving them a chance to just compete on the basis of skill and nerve, not including power in that, is kind of fascinating, right?
Yeah.
And again,
Well, do we think that more golfers are going to start playing your golf because we just haven't given them access to those facilities? To me, I believe it. I believe that is the case. It sounds like you do as well.
Yeah, I think that like the barriers to entry. I've actually written about this for years, for a long time, and working for the Geo Foundation in Scotland, we were really thinking very hard about sustainability and accessibility and getting people into golf, and like taking down some of the barriers and the frustrations for those initial learning steps into golf. I think helps a huge amount. If you just eliminate the frustration of taking 5 shots to get out of a bunker and putting your ball in your pocket, that's pretty huge. That person might come back.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
What kind of goes back to the original question, Andy, is do you notice a change in the golfer, the golf mentality? I do a little bit, but maybe it's still kind of like underground, and it's just like these sort of like alt golf experiences, whether it's a Sweetens Cove or the Goat Park Hill, or even Common Ground Tom referenced before. Like that's just a really cool golf course. There are these types of places that people seem to want to go to. Schoolhouse 9, just interesting things that probably wouldn't have been built 25 or 30 years ago. And yet I sense there's a hunger for a certain demographic to seek out a 13-hole golf course, or the reversible golf course, or something, that's just non-traditional 18-hole championship golf course. So the question is, there's that, I think there's that latent hunger out there, but there's also this other audience that we're talking about, that is the golfer who hasn't been touched yet, the golfer who hasn't been reached out to yet. What are some architectural things? Chaska is a great example of how you can design a golf course that is intended to be playable and an open hand to any type of golfer. What are some architectural things, ideas that you, Georgia, you and Andy have had in the past that you think would be able to reach out to a demographic who's never been spoken to before?
I think, to me, not trying to be cute about it, but honestly, to me, it starts at the tee. One of the most basic things you can do to make a golf course more enjoyable for more people is to have teeing options that kind of fit their game, that allow them to grow into the game, that allow them to, play the game over the course of their lifetime. And forward tees in particular, we hear, unfortunately, in the architecture world, and I certainly experienced this firsthand in my architectural career, as these guys have all had, there's a lot of concern about, like, is the course going to be long enough? You approach a renovation project and they really want to add back tees. We got to get this back. A tiny fraction of golfers plays beyond, a certain length. And it's like 6,600. By the time you're past 6,800, nobody's playing back there except for a handful of people. But there's a huge number of people that are underserved on the shorter end through the middle, where the people are actually playing. And so it's something like 40% of US courses don't have a forward tee shorter than 5,000 yards. And like 5,000 yards sounds like it's short, but realistically, for someone with a 150 mile an hour driver, 150 yard driving distance, that's a really long golf course. And there's a ton of holes on there that, with their best shots, they're nowhere near the green. And it's driver, longest club in the bag, driver, longest club. I mean, that's that's a self-inflicted wound in a lot of ways, because it's a really easy thing to fix and it's really affordable to fix. Putting combo tees on golf courses with the tees that they already have to just give people a little more range of choice, those can make a big impact. So that's like the inventory part of it. Then there's sort of the convincing people to actually use tees that are a good fit for their game part of the equation, which we all know is like not always a strength of golfers, but you got to have the inventory first, and then you can work on the education, but you can't convince people to go use something that isn't there. And so to me, that kind of starts the tee as like a really easy way to get the ball rolling.
Yeah. So, yeah, the industry has been very discriminatory to the slow swing speeds. That is no question about that. I mean, if you look at all of those, the actual data for how far people hit the ball based on anyone that swings it less than, say, 75 miles an hour, it's pretty insane how long of a golf course. And I speak to women here. I just can't believe an entire group of women in our industry have learned the game of golf by hitting driver 3-wood, driver 3-wood, 3-wood on every par 3, and then possibly chipping around the greens when they finally get close. That's how they learn the game, which is quite phenomenal. You even still play the game, which makes it really hard to get a very good group of women to move forward. So I'm a big believer in the forward tees, and certainly using fact and science to justify those forward sets of tees. But I've seen two trends in my experience. One is around this idea of 18 holes, and then two around the idea of par and match play versus stroke play. So the first one, it's phenomenal to me, the amount of meetings I've had, and a fair bit. I've probably done more. I don't know if there's anyone done any more research with municipal golf than I have, but I've had as many golf meetings with golf committees around trying to fit the number of holes to what the site would tell you that they need to fit. So, for example, one that comes to mind, I was in a group of people about this size, all golfers, proposed a 12-hole golf course. And a fair group of people here stood up and said, if you give me less than 18 holes, I will never come back. We all know that's not true. However, the city officials were all listening to this, right? And this is their core market. This is their avid golfers. This is the people that play the majority of their rounds. When their customer base says less than 18 holes, no go, then as a consultant, I can only do so much, either walk away from the job or then do something else. So what I typically then do is make sure I try to do something around 18 holes, but then try to shift the conversation away from par and away from yardage. So that's when this idea of match play, I think, has real legs. Thankful to Gil Hands for doing the first Hoopy match play course, because that, our industry, we follow the leaders, right? If Gil Hands and Hoopy can do a private club that's match play, that means everyone can do it. Or at least it's given me the excuse to do it. So if you can do something less, if you already have to have 18 holes, then you don't worry about the scorecard. You get rid of par, you get rid of the idea that you're actually playing against the course, and you facilitate a game as they play in Scotland. And that you say about the championship courses in Scotland where you pick up, I mean, that's real. And so from my standpoint, I have completely shifted not only the way I bring my boys, I have 3 young boys, but I've also shifted the way I play golf with the friends of mine. And I had played alternate shot foursomes with my buddies, and they don't even know what it is. They didn't know how to play it. Now they watch the Ryder Cup, but they never once thought that they could actually go do that themselves. And so match play courses, I believe, have that idea that actually have some real merit, that you can shift the context of stroke play and length into just enjoying the game with your friends. So
Is it just a matter of exposing people to different setups, a match play concept, taking the yardages off the card or par off the card? Is it just a matter of getting people to try that for the first time? Like they're trying, sushi for the first time, and it's like getting over the barrier. And once they get there, they're accepting to it. We're locked into our preconceptions and these models, the PGA Tour, the green grass, the fast greens, what we're told is good golf. But it seems to me that just getting somebody to to try the piece of sushi it opens the door. Everything's possible at that point.
The hard thing with match play, I think, and like, I've played a lot of golf, been fortunate to live in Scotland multiple times and play a lot of golf over there. And like, I don't know if I've ever played a 4-hour round. Like it's hard to play as slowly as is totally typical here. And like, obviously match play is a big part of that because you're hitting fewer shots. And so it's faster. The thing that I've had a hard time always wrapping my head around here is like, well, if I'm playing match play, but everybody else on the course is playing stroke play, it does me no good because I just go and like, unless I'm first off, I just hit them. And so that's the interesting thing about like match play clubs, or I haven't really heard of places that try to allocate like blocks of time during the day to a match play event, or like match play formats, or just something so that people could get a good fair try of it. I mean, I think that's the thing that's hard. It's like, I dragged some of my friends into playing match play, playing public courses on Long Island. And they're like, yeah, great. This is no faster. It took us 4 hours and 45 minutes. Like this format is no good. We just sat and waited longer. It's like, well, actually, and so like trying to get it to actually work in practice and give people a fair shake at it, I think is hard. But I think it addresses so many issues of like frustration, how long it takes to play, like all those things match play kind of helps a lot with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think that's fascinating. I mean, I've never heard of a golf course programming with like a match play only day or something like that, or a match play only morning. I can only speak to, I haven't played a whole lot of golf over here, but I played in Pine Needles a couple of days ago, and just had the US Women's Open just this last year. And it was 4 Scots, myself included, walking, carrying our clubs with a bunch of golf carts behind us, a bunch of golf carts in front of us. But like, we should have just taken carts. It was
standing.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know, but the idea of programming a golf course for certain periods of the day for just match play or something, to me, that's pretty fascinating.
Andy, your experience, so you built the match course at PGA Resort, and your experience was that there was some initial resistance to the concept, which is the concept is the holes are mostly short, but there's really no allegiance to par. It's designed to be played 1-on-1 or 2-on-2, and the winner of the next hole, there are no tee markers, so you just go to the next tee and peg it up wherever whoever won the last hole wants to play it. And initially, some of the resort players didn't know what to do with it, but the progress is as more people are exposed.
Yeah, I think we're making headway, but if anyone has ever spent any time in Florida golfers like their golf, right? They like it exactly the way they like it. And so we had more resistance from the local members, because they couldn't record a score. We also refused to rate it to the local golf association, which is an entirely different discussion. So I was even fielding phone calls from the Florida Golf Association asking me why I would not let my client rate the golf course, because we said we didn't want to, and they didn't like that. So that's another, actually, that the idea of handicap and handicapping and course rating is actually another barrier we should be talking about, because this idea that if it's not rated and if it's a certain slope or whatever, back to the difficulty discussion. But from the resort play, I would tell you the people that come from out of town. So PGA National also has the Champ course, which is where they play the Honda Classic, the Jack Nicklaus on the tour event. And so very difficult golf. And so we tried to be a little bit of the opposite. Go, get beat up and play your stroke play out on the Champ course. And then when you're done, go have lunch and then bring your 8 buddies and go play an 8-some out on our match play course. That is having some, that's sticking a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it really comes back, a lot of this discussion really comes back that architecture can only bring it so far. It has to be then carried across the finish line by the operations, by the management, and how it's actually, like this idea of a match play window or match play day. I don't know that I have all the perfect example. We ask you to only play match play at the match course. Now, Florida golfer is saying, no, I am going to card and pencil this thing all day long. But but it comes back to operations. All this stuff come back to accessibility. You come back to beginner programs. It's all about the people behind the desk, promoting what kind of facility they want to provide. And I think municipal golf is the best position to be able to do.
I had a fascinating experience yesterday at my first random golf club meetup with Eric and his group, which absolutely blew me away. I saw a group of 60 people all playing golf at the same time on East Potomac Links, teeing it up together, more or less, and sort of as many people could fit on the tee at the same time, all playing to, take the best drive up in the fairway. Everyone kind of meanders up there chatting and, trying to discern their ball from all the 60 other golf balls out there. They move up to the next golf ball, all play into the green. And then, someone holds the putt and they go to the next hole. And I've never seen anything like that in all the years I've been playing golf. And I thought that was absolutely fascinating. When you talk about just programming a golf course for like a little slightly different way for a period of the day, kudos, Eric. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of goes to the topic of we talk about barriers, and there's barriers of price and barriers of location where the club's located, but the barrier of expectations too. Like that's a way to play golf that in the past, like I don't know who thought of that. Like you might have seen that at a club on a Sunday with a sixth that annoyed you, but like people I think are willing to like embrace a new model of golf.
Yeah.
Because it's fun. Because people enjoy
If
it.
it's fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that haven't like played or like haven't gotten on board with the traditional.
Well, there's a lot of people that wouldn't
version of
like
golf.
that too.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
I mean,
And
I
that's
think that
okay.
there's an opportunity there because, they haven't been drawn into the traditional offering. And so if the vast majority of the country or whomever haven't been drawn in, like maybe something different would be more interesting.
Sure. Going back to the architectural conversation, since that is kind of what you guys do. Yeah. The concept of difficulty being a barrier or something that's at least accepted as part of golf and golf course design. Do you agree, or do you think that the way to attract juniors, seniors, adaptive golfers, new golfers is to, create more width, take rough out of the equation, take water out of the equation, give them enough space to play? Is that a secret ingredient? And if so, and you may disagree with that, but if so, at what point do you start to dumb down the golf where it's not a challenge or it's not interesting anymore? It's the old for generations since old Tom Morris tried to figure out how to challenge the great player and the novice as well. So what point is it too dumb? At what point is accessibility too dumb?
I think there's a lot of, I think that there's a lot of unnecessary difficulty for average golfers, less skilled golfers that can just be taken out without worrying about dumbing down the experience. Like, the opportunity to lose balls within 50 yards of the tee, I think is just something that you could just dump and no one's going to miss it at all. And it's not like the person hasn't paid a price. Like you duffed the ball 10 feet in front of you. Like I've been doing this a bunch lately, so I've been thinking about it. Like it's already bad enough, right? Like I've paid my penalty. Like it doesn't need to be like a lost ball. Like,
Yeah.
Okay, like I'm miles away. I'm hitting so those kinds of things, I think you can really remove some of the egregious kind of things without losing anything. The narrowness that's just, unpleasant for basically everyone. I think everyone wants to feel a little bit, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but it's nice to feel like a little comfortable when you're playing golf, right? And not, so like, I think that there's a width component to that of like, it's just nice to not feel like you're being like thrown in on. But yeah, can width go too far in terms of, I don't necessarily know that it's like dumbing the game down because, there's some really wide golf courses that are not uninteresting or, certainly aren't like easy. But yeah, can that go too far in my mind? Probably, and it probably has in a few examples.
Go ahead, Ben. So yeah, I think it can go too far. And I think a lot of it comes back to the very site specific. So
Sure.
Again, going back to my experience of getting my boys into the game, I'm 3 for 3 so far. So so far they all count themselves as golfers, 14, 12, and 8 years old. And so we play I live in Arizona. And so we play, very flat golf courses with a lot, too many trees and a lot of water. But I'm surprised at how many times my boys want to go up to the water, hit it over the water to get it on the green. So and I'm not saying anything other than, no, let's play over here. Let's get around the water. And they immediately go to the challenge of the game. So I agree with what George said about, just innately taking away the items of just, tee shots for sure. But you have to be careful. I think, you go to Sand Valley, Mammoth Dunes is one that talks about being very wide, but you go out and see Mammoth Dunes, it's striking. I mean, it's incredible. It's that aesthetic. It's got everything about it that even though it's wide, you have an exhilaration of hitting a tee shot. And so that's where I'm saying, if I go make Arizona Country Club, the place I play in Arizona, and I make it as wide as Mammoth Dunes, I'd take out 3 holes. but I think you lose it. I think that there's got to be some site specific design, and that real good architecture, thoughtful architecture, whether it's wide or narrow, still prevails. And there's plenty of great architecture that doesn't have to be 100 yards wide.
Is I'm not sure what the right word for it, but something along the lines of scoring advocacy, or designing holes that encourage people to make a good score, which would, really bump up against the making it dumbing it down too much. But, that was one of the observations at Mammoth Dunes or Gamble Sands too, David Kidd's, which I think are terrific courses, really good courses, but people go there and they play their best round. They often have the best score of their lives on these golf courses. So would that ever be an aspiration for drawing people into the game? It seems to be a winning argument if you could have that and design a golf course where, a 20 handicap goes and shoots a 84, they're going to be pretty excited about that.
I mean, I don't even know that it's like, number one, I think that anything we can do to de-emphasize people's fixation with their own score is like a positive. So, take that as a fundamental aspect of it.
Did you say it's a positive or impossible?
Well, it's a great thing about playing golf in Scotland is you live over there and you haven't posted a score. You have no idea what you've been shooting other than, you want to, so that's nice. It really is like a weight off your mind. That said, I think we all remember, the first pars that you made, when you made a birdie, when you were a kid playing golf, it was a big deal. And it was something that kept you coming back. It's I don't love the fact that scoring is such a big part of our golf mentality, but it is a reality of it. And it is part of the fun of the game. And so I think it is important to have that element, at least some opportunities for that out there, because that does draw you back. You do remember, I made a real par today when you're just starting up the game, or last week for me. And so it matters. It does make a difference to people.
There is just something cool about seeing a golf ball land on the ground, react to some kind of contours, maybe meander up and over something, catch another contour, disappear, reappear over there. Yeah. I think that's undefeated. Mammoth Dunes has, some examples like that. I quite like it when there's, a contour that you can catch like that, but maybe on the flip side, there's something where it's gonna, if you don't get it quite right, it's gonna go as far away in the opposite direction. So there's ways to use ground contour, which is the cheapest thing to build. It's just shapes. To help, can be kind of friend or foe. I was just out in Ireland playing Tom's Knee courses and Patrick's Links, and there's the approach contours to those golf holes fascinating. Some of them are helping you and guiding you in, and some of them are just see you. So that kind of stuff is super cool, right? And I think you can build that into any golf course anywhere. Links turf obviously helps, but regardless, for a lot of people, just hitting that kind of low bunt along the ground is all they've got. So
I almost feel like that kind of, in America, that kind of architecture is wasted on the high handicap player. When I go to Bandon or Sand Valley, invariably my caddy's it's 165, here's your 7-iron. And I'm perfectly capable of taking out my 4-iron and bumping it up there, but I always pull the lofted club that he wants. And all the contours are just sitting out there. Whereas the high handicapper can't get it up, but they're going to learn those slopes and contours much faster.
Yeah, absolutely. We just don't really see a whole lot of that golf because the strokes gained would dictate that you hit the ball through the air.
Yeah.
And so we don't see people hitting ground game shots really outside of the Open Championship.
The width and angles discussion will be an interesting to see how long it lasts, because much like we go through different phases of life and certain architecture, when we went through a period through the 30s, the Great Depression, World War II, a lot of bunkers got removed. Now the USJ is making it very aware of our reduction of our footprint of water use and chemical use. The one thing that is top of mind for me, being Southwest and a lot of my clients, is that some people may not be able to use chemicals at some point, and water in Arizona, there's a really good chance in the next 10 years, many golf courses in Arizona won't be overseeding because they just don't have enough water to do that. So it's really hard. As much as I love to hit the shots at Gamble's, I haven't played Gamble, but at Mammoth Dunes, that's awesome. But we're gonna have to figure out how to do that on a smaller footprint for a lot of places.
In the few minutes we have remaining, I wanted to turn this topic and this conversation back to municipal golf and public golf. And as we're talking about the course setups and architecture and availability of golf and barriers and all this, it strikes me that public golf and municipal golf is bearing the brunt of this need to bring people into the game. Private clubs are thriving, many are anyway, and the kids of private club members are doing great. They get great golf and great instruction and all that. But when we're doing outreach and trying to draw new demographics in and introduce children to the game, school children, whatnot, it seems like it has to happen at municipal golf. And I mean, it doesn't seem right. Municipal golf is struggling. Andy, we were talking before about how, cities are looking, it's an ongoing war to preserve municipal and public golf in many places. There are outside forces that want to turn them into parks, or as Tom Doak mentioned, a shopping center or housing, or utilize that land in some other, what they think is revenue generating way. Why is it that it falls upon a public golf entities and like National Links Trust to try to preserve these golf courses and bring people into the game when the other half of the golf world is prospering to such a high degree, and not, or they're just, because they're private clubs, they're just not positioned to welcome in a lot of kids and old people and disabled golfers.
Did Hazeltine have something to do with your facility, the Loop, or was that just a loose? Because
They were generous.
they were generous. Yeah, I mean, because so it is in the private industry's best interest to help municipal golf, because that's the only way, unless there's kids of members, right? It's the only way to bring people in the game. So I feel like there's got to be some partnership, and every local community that has a local golf course has to be in part supported in some way by the private club. I think that from an equitable standpoint, that needs to happen. We as architects, Ben, you got a RFP job, as brutal as those are. The business of golf, for golf architects, you have to start by doing municipal work, because the high-end private clubs aren't hiring young guys out of school and doing the things we do. So that's one of the reasons why I got into municipal golf. But I wanted to do it in a way that wasn't just the same cookie cutter way, which it sounds like you do as well. So I think we as architects have an obligation to take on municipal work, as difficult as it can be. And so do I think municipal golf bears the brunt? I think they should, because in part, they're the best positioned entities to allow to offer golf as a service. They're not as driven for profit, albeit if it's a general fund drain, that's a different discussion. If it's an enterprise fund, yeah, you have to fund it. There's all kinds of nuances there, but I think municipal golf is the best place for us to train our future golfers.
Yeah, I mean, it's been touched on already, but having cool golf opportunities and experiences where people actually, or large groups of people actually live, is critical. I live in Tokyo, it's 36 million people. I'm keen for like some local and somewhat accessible golf opportunities. Yeah, look, the Loop at Chaska is a fascinating project. The barrier-free golf kind of came in and worked with the city of Chaska, raised $1 million for the project. And, they managed to get out into the local community. That was a lot of like just local philanthropic contributions. And there's something in that, right? That's fascinating. The municipal, the land, municipalities have the land, perhaps, the private club scene and some nonprofits that are kind of born of that have the connections. There's something there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, number one, I do think there are a lot of examples of situations where private clubs and communities do lend a helping hand to public facilities and municipal facilities in their area, because a lot of the people that play at those clubs came up through municipal golf, like many of us did. And so, but golf does a really good job sometimes of like not telling its own good stories, which I think is a shame. And I think that municipal golf is really uniquely well positioned to highlight like what's good about golf and what does golf bring to your neighborhood, because these courses are where people live, they're in the towns. They've got a chance to tell, talk about the good things that golf does for communities now, from an environmental standpoint, from outdoor recreation standpoint, all these benefits that we all know about that golf really doesn't talk enough about. And then they're really in a great spot to try to do more, because they sort of have a responsibility to do more. And yeah, municipal golf has to bear a heavier load, but I think that's the responsibility that comes with being, a publicly owned facility. But there's opportunities in that. There's opportunities to justify, hey, this is owned by everybody. And so that's why we're putting a trail through the perimeter of this course. And okay, you might not like it that people are walking out here, but this isn't a private country club. This is a public space. And so that's why we're doing this. There's plenty of examples of how this works in other places. We're going to do it here. Alternative programming, those different kinds of things. That's an opportunity that, the burdens that municipal golf carries, they get opportunities as well to really lead. And so I think it cuts both ways, but.
Yeah, I think this industry, the golf industry, is hungry for an entity like National Links Trust to take a leadership role in this discussion. It's incredible that we've lasted this long without that unified voice. USGA hasn't done it yet.
It's not like
the-
Society of Golf Course Architects hasn't done it yet.
I mean, we
rude, right?
but with all our partnerships, we all have these competing interests. We have all of our competing interests on our little piece of the pie, but not one entity has brought it all together. And it just needs to keep being told over and over. And, it's interesting, just the conversations I've had with Will and the group, how many calls they're already getting. The appetite is there. I think we have the brain power. It's just nobody's ever been able to put it together in one. I have a fair bit of confidence this is at least a good start to it.